Hey guys, Sean here at the Gardener Center. You know, I never have any trouble figuring out what it is I'm going to talk about during my videos every week. You know, I've mentioned to you guys before, as long as plants and gardening is our topic, there's never going to be a lack of content. That's easy. It was a bit of a struggle for me this past week, though, I have to admit, because the way my week went was pretty much, okay, these guys are here now, I'm going to talk about them in my video this week. Oh, but wait, now you're here. You're out. I'm talking about you this week. And then the next day, somebody else would show up, and I was like, well, you're both out. You're the subject this week. So, long story short, there's a lot of stuff coming in, a lot of things that I haven't seen and you haven't seen since last May. And I want to try to talk about as many things as I can during the month of May and probably going into the month of June. So, the smart idea I had, the way I'm going to try to cover as much plant ground as possible, is I'm going to try to talk about groups of plants. So plants that share common traits, you know, plants that are similar in some ways. So like next week, I'm going to be talking about all those summer vegetables that everybody's been anxious to plant, and we're going to be talking about that next week, so don't miss that. But this week, I have assembled a group of vines. We can call them vines, climbers, ramblers, sprawlers, whatever you want. I have some here that are hardy perennials. I have some here that are tropical annuals that we treat as perennials, and some that are true annuals. So this week, I'm going to try to sort out all things vine, so stick around. All right, guys, so the first group of vines here I'm going to talk about are the tropical perennial vines. So those are the guys that if we lived in South Florida or Southern California, or even better, Hawaii, you'd be able to have these in your yard year-round, but here in Connecticut, we treat them as annuals. We use them for one season, and then we get rid of them in the fall and start again next year. People come in shopping for vines all the time. I help people with vines all the time, and it's really funny with vines because a lot of times people will come in thinking that they want this, but after a few questions, I actually realized that they want that. So there is a little bit of confusion with vines. So a good way to kind of separate them out, your tropical perennials versus the hardy perennials. Tropical vines are going to flower and grow all spring, summer, and fall. As long as they're in your containers, they're going to do that. So we have mandevillas here. We have jasmines here. We have diplodenia down here. So those are three common ones that you guys probably recognize. These guys are going to grow and they're going to flower perpetually during the growing season. The hardy vines, things like the clematis over here, the honeysuckle over here, climbing hydrangeas, those things are going to flower for part of the summer or part of the spring, but not the duration. So a lot of times when people come in and they ask about vines, I'll be like, well, do you want something that flowers all summer? Or do you want something that's going to come back every year? And inevitably, they all want the one that's going to come back every year and flower all summer, but that doesn't exist. So I'm going to kind of try to sort that out a little bit here. So mandevillas, look at this beautiful apricot color one here. You typically see them in red and pink, but this guy's gorgeous. Mandevillas all summer, jasmine all summer. Little diplodenias over here, and the botanists are always making things more confusing. Now over here we have the mandinas. So we got the mandevillas and the diplodenias, and they made the mandinas, so now we have the mandinas to talk about too. Those guys are going to give you color all summer, but you have to replace them every year. Same thing with the jasmine over here. The perennial ones, you can use them in containers, and I actually it's like a little plant hack that I love. So right here, I have this beautiful jasmine and this really pretty obelisk. Now you could set this up in your pot as a standalone. You wouldn't even have to put anything else in your pot. This would work. This is gorgeous. But maybe you don't want to throw the jasmine away at the end of the season. Maybe you want to, everyone has a budget, so maybe you don't want to spend the money on the jasmine that you're going to throw away. So I would invite you to look at one of our hardy perennial vines, the clematis. This happens to be a Boulevard series clematis from Monrovia Nurseries, and the Boulevard series have been bred specifically to be small and to grow slower. So a lot of clematis would just eat this obelisk up alive in a month and you wouldn't even see it anymore. You can put the clematis in here in place of the jasmine, and then in the fall, when you do your fall planters, you can plant the clematis in your garden. So you're not spending money on the obelisk plant or your tall plant and then throwing it away. You're repurposing it. So that's a smart way. If you want this look with a perennial plant, you can do that. The clematis typically bloom heavily in June, and then they spit flowers for the rest of the season. They do not bloom, they're not covered with flowers all summer like the jasmines and the diplodenias and the mandevillas, but they do make these really funky and cool seed heads when they're done flowering, and the foliage is pretty. And plus, you know, on an obelisk or even on the teepee like this, you're still getting that vertical element in your container. So again, you can use this as a standalone in the pot by itself, or if you have big pots, this is a great alternative to like using a grass or a dracaena. You could use a feature like this, and then, you know, at the end of the season, put the obelisk in your garage and pull it out again and use it next year. So some major differences between, so we know these guys flower all summer and the hardy ones are not. The other major difference is the way they grow. People hear the words vine, they hear the word climber, and they might think that everybody's going to do that kind of wrapping and twining that they do, and that's not the case with all of these plants. That is very much the case with mandevillas. If you've grown clematis or morning glories, things like that before, passion vines, you know how all you have to do is put them near something and they're just going to go on their own. A lot of these plants don't grow like that. Some notable ones is the so-called climbing rose that I have over here. This one's called Zephyrine Johann. One of my favorites. It's thornless, number one. It also grows in the shade, which I can't say for any other rose plant. So this is a Zephyrine Johann, a really old French rose, but it's great for that. But climbing roses don't actually climb at all. Climbing roses just happen to be roses that have really long stems. And if you were to plant a climbing rose and not assist it in any way, it would just flop and grow all over the ground. The same way a tomato plant, which we also call vines, we're going to talk about them next week, they're more similar to a tomato than a mandevilla in the way they grow. So a climbing rose on a trellis or a fence, because remember, they don't have trellises or fences in nature, a climbing rose needs to be affixed by you. So you can either weave it through a picket fence as it grows, or if you're growing it on a fan trellis or an arbor, you have to use plant ties and that sort of thing, and you have to guide it along as it goes. It's not gonna climb its way up like a clematis or a morning glory would. So that's the climbing roses grow that way. Same thing could be said for like bougainvillas. A lot of times you'll see bougainvillas here at the nursery on teepees like this. But the same thing, or if you've ever been to like Arizona or Southern California, you'll see them climbing all over things. But again, they need to be like tied along and encouraged so they form that framework. The other guy over here, so the third way climbers work is by sticking, like adhering. They throw out these little tiny roots. If you've ever like pulled English ivy off of trees in your yard or off your house like I have to do, you know that they kind of glue themselves with little rootlets. The climbing hydrangea works the same way. These guys are notoriously slow growing for the first couple of years they're in the yard. Usually after about 3 or 4 years, they'll take off, but these guys will adhere themselves to masonry work or stonework or wood by those little roots that they stick out, just like a Boston ivy or an English ivy would. So two main differences in our vines here is, number one, they're flowering, and number two, the way they attach themselves. So we also have over here, the one guy that I didn't talk about over here too much is the honeysuckle. That's another one of the hardy ones. This guy is a must-have if you are into hummingbirds. Hummingbirds love this one. A lot of times when I say the words honeysuckle to people, they're like, no, I don't want that. You don't want to confuse these with the Hall's honeysuckle. That's the one that grows on the side of the road and takes over abandoned lots. That one was imported from Japan in the 1800s. It's invasive, it's nasty. These honeysuckles that we do here at the store are all cultivars of our native honeysuckle. So these are the good guys. So I hope I took a little bit of the confusion out of the vining situation here, and stay tuned. All right, guys, so Mother's Day weekend is finally upon us. You know, I've been talking about this weekend for weeks now because it coincides with that May 15th average last frost date that I've been talking about. And, you know, it's typically when we typically say to people, well, you want to wait till Mother's Day weekend to plant this and Mother's Day weekend to plant that. And don't put your house plants out until Mother's Day weekend. But let's not lose sight of the fact that it's also Mother's Day. Sunday is Mom's special day. And if you want to get Mom something really special, this is a great place to look. If she's a gardener, we have you know, roses and hydrangeas, you know, tropical hibiscus, things that we can deliver to her to plant in her yard, things that could also be wrapped up for you to pick up if you want to come and bring it to her yourself. And not to mention the fact that I've been here for 15 years and our flower cooler has never looked more gorgeous than it does right now. You can shop our floral arrangements online 24 hours a day at gardenercenter.com. Just click shop now and hit the floral arrangements and shop there. So please check us out either in person, give us a ring, or check us out at gardenercenter.com. I'll see you guys next week.